what I've learned over the years, okay, what I've learned over the years is it's hard for Americans to understand Tibetan medicine unless somebody first puts it into language that Americans can understand. So that's my goal this morning, to take this huge, very profound system and in about 40 minutes or so, put it in language Americans can understand. So it's just going to be glossing it over, and then we will hear from the Tibetan doctors. I love talking about Tibetan medicine, and I do this a lot, and it's because it integrates ethics, spirituality, and healing. Now, I have a PhD in nursing and bioethics, and in all my bioethics education, there was never any talk about spirituality. It's possible they're bringing it in now. Bioethics, or ethics, is over here. Too often, curing and sometimes healing is over here. Spirituality is over here, and we don't bring them together. The Center for Spirituality and Healing is bringing spirituality and healing together, but bioethics is still over here. And so I love Tibetan medicine because they're one and the same. Is that if we behave with violence toward ourselves in how we think, if I say you're not good enough, why can't you be better? Why don't you do a better job? That's a type of violence. And then if I'm engaging in that kind of thinking, then I'm probably not going to make good lifestyle choices. And so therefore, ethics, behaving in a nonviolent, compassionate way, is intricately involved with spirituality and healing. Unless we behave ethically, we cannot grow spiritually, and we are going to have a hard time healing and being in good health. And as Mary Jo said, we are so excited about the new Tibetan Healing Initiative, and we are launching it in honor of these events. All the materials for the course, for the conference, are on the THI website. We're trying to save trees, so we didn't give you a lot of paper, so you can read all this on the website. And we all have to have this now for the CMEs, disclosure. The medicine Buddha is the symbol of Tibetan medicine. And you notice what color? What color is the medicine Buddha? And blue is a healing color. So when you see a blue Buddha, that's a medicine Buddha. And the medicine Buddha is wearing monk's clothes, so it's not like he's rich and famous with lots of diamonds and jewels. And he's sitting in a meditative pose, and he's offering medicine to the world. And that is a symbol of Tibetan medicine, that each one of us can heal and be a medicine Buddha in the world. A Buddha is simply someone who's enlightened, who sees everything, and this is what we can all be. Regardless of our religion, our background, our values, each of us can be a healer in the world, and the world desperately needs healers. Just briefly, I teach a 3-course sequence. As Mary Jo mentioned, the first course is, this is a graduate course sequence, and anyone from a junior, senior, and up can take it. In the summer, I teach a course about the deeper dimension of yoga. Yoga is a way of life to join together within oneself and with the universe. Tibetan medicine, I teach in the fall, and that teaches us how to develop a healthy body and mind so we can be joined together within ourselves and with the universe. So that's the relationship between yoga and Tibetan medicine. Then if students take those 2 courses, they're eligible to take the India course. And it's an amazing course. We go to the Mensikong. They teach us a 6-day intensive course about Tibetan medicine. We meet high lamas in India. Is the Nechung monks chant for us. And every one of the students comes back transformed. And I get to do this every year, so you can imagine the effect on me, and I'm very grateful. Just to show you this is real, this is our group last year with our speakers in Dharamsala. And when we were in Dharamsala last year, I met with Tibetan doctors, and Dr. Sewang Tamden selected them, and we worked on research that we are going to report today. There's very little scientific research about Tibetan medicine, and we have a funded proposal going right now, and in fact, each of you were invited to participate in it. You got a link to participate. And I encourage you to do so. What we wanted was for you to participate before the conference, then we'll see what the conference effect is, and then participate afterward. But we talked last night, I talked with Amy, a research assistant, and we decided that this is such an important way for you to apply Tibetan medicine, that if you did not participate beforehand, you are still welcome to participate afterwards, so go ahead and do that. And your data in some way will probably be helpful for the research. When we go to Dharamsala, we always bring medical supplies. And one of the places we take them, each of us carries medical supplies. This year our group is 19. And one of the places we take them is to Tibetan Children's Village. And so the reason we do that is so we can reciprocate for Tibetans' kindness to us, and then we want to carry out the teachings that we're here to serve rather than get. Okay, why study Tibetan medicine? Well, one reason is because of the scientific evidence that this works. First of all, there's a link to the Mensikong research. Tibetan doctors have been doing research for a long, long time, and they're looking for evidence-based findings. Then there has been some Western scientific research done, but most of it has been about particular Tibetan medicines. And we are going to report our research, integrative health and Tibetan medicine, development of a constitutional self-assessment tool and lifestyle guidelines tool at the Center for Spirituality and Healing. And it's an internally funded study. And then also on the THI website is a link to research that's related to Tibetan medicine, and there's a ton of that, and you can look at it. And so that's about meditation, compassion, yoga, all these different topics. Why study Tibetan medicine? This is a wonderful statement by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and it's on the back of one of the required books published by the Mensikong. I require it for my courses. Tibetan medicine is far more advanced in the understanding of the nature of the mind than Western medicine. They have understanding that we don't even know about how to create and maintain a healthy mind. In matters of understanding the physical functioning of the human body, Tibetan medicine is less advanced than Western medicine. So Western medicine knows a lot about technology, physical findings, but less about the mind. Without mixing the two approaches and without saying one is better than the other, both schools should work together in order to find ways of understanding and thus boost the effectiveness of the two healing systems. And that is the purpose of this conference today. So we have Tibetan medicine practitioners and we have Western healthcare practitioners. Okay, what do you see here? Okay, there are two people there. One is a glitzy young woman, and she has a feather in her hat, if you can see her. And the other one is an old crone. Some people say old lady, and I prefer wise old woman. And our Western medical system can be represented by the glitzy young woman. We have all these glitzy tasks and treatments and medications, but there's a wise old woman that we tend to forget. Our internal wisdom. It's what we know, but we aren't listening to, and that's represented by the wise old woman. And so Tibetan medicine will help us wake up that wise woman within ourselves, and so that we can live in harmony with who we are. We are fortunate in Minnesota to have actually 4 practitioners of Tibetan medicine. There are very few Tibetans practicing in the U.S., and we actually have 4 here. And we're integrating the Western approach with Tibetan medicine, and here's a good example. Here I am with Dr. Tenzin Namdal, who's been working with me closely. He's been my link to the Mensikong all these years. We've done many, many projects together, and now he's here studying at the University of Minnesota. I just want to point out the Minnesota statute regarding practitioners of Tibetan medicine, and there's the link, you can go to it. Tibetan medicine is legal in Minnesota. Somehow there's the rumor that the practicing Tibetan medicine is illegal. Tibetan practitioners can practice here as long as they don't puncture the skin, unless they're an acupuncturist. As long as they don't puncture the skin, they don't call themselves a doctor, and they don't manipulate the joints. Otherwise, they're perfectly free to practice here. And this is the statute that regulates it. Okay, in giving you an overview of Tibetan medicine, I'm going to talk about 4 topics. Number 1, karma. As His Holiness said it very well yesterday, he said that there are 2 basic teachings of Buddhism which underlies Tibetan medicine. One is dependent origination, and one is about compassion. And so what karma means is that everything is the result of multiple causes and conditions. And if you give out a certain kind of energy, you're going to get that back. So if you plant tomatoes, do you get corn? What do you get when you plant tomatoes? You get tomatoes, don't you? And the same with us. What we give out is what we're going to get back. I've done several research studies about the experience of ethical problems. And in each one of these studies, people, when they were resolving ethical conflict well, they said something like, as you sow, so shall you reap. They want to have good consequences as a result of their choices. And so that is what karma is. If you plant suffering, you will reap suffering. If you plant happiness, you will reap happiness. So the way to be happy is to make choices that lead to happiness. Sounds too simple, doesn't it? Actually, that's what it is. But I'll explain a little bit why it is we have trouble with that. Okay, to go further, is each of us is made up of 5 elements. So we're born with these 5 elements, and it's hard for Americans to understand this. So think of these as principles, not as nouns. So there's the principle of air or movement. I have to be able to move to be alive. My blood has to be able to circulate. Fire, that's the principle of heat. I have to have enough heat in order to digest food, in order to grow, in order to develop. Water, that's the principle of moisture and smoothness. Each of us has to have enough lubrication, water, in order to function. Earth, it doesn't mean dirt. It means the principle of stability and structure. Without the principle of earth, I would not be able to stand up here today. I'd just be on the floor. Space allows elements to interact, coexist. So each of us is made up of these 5 elements, which means that we're all interconnected. On the inside, we are all the same, as His Holiness said yesterday. Now, these 5 elements make up 3 energies, and each of us has all 3 energies. Each of us has the energy of lung, which is the energy of movement. We have to be able to move. And this is movement of the body and movement of the mind. So it also is about our thoughts. When the body's moving, the mind is moving, and vice versa. Then there's the energy of tipa, which is heat energy, and we have to have that. And the energy of bacon, which is water, earth, and stability energy. It's cold energy, as in Chinese medicine. Each of us has a unique combination of these 3 energies, and that is what Tibetan medicine calls our constitution. So it's imperative that each of us find out what is our unique combination of the 3 energies in order to make wise lifestyle choices and be healthy and happy. So we need to live in harmony with who we are, not who we wish we were. And so somebody who has primarily lung energy is said to have a lung constitution. If someone who has primarily tipa energy is said to have a tipa constitution or a heat constitution. Many of us have more than one energy are dominant. The 2 energies are dominant. So in that case, somebody whose lung and tipa are similar, but their bacon is much lower, they're said to have a lung tipa constitution. And so whatever one's constitution is has a great effect on what one's characteristics are. That's why some of us are tall, some of us are short, some of us are bigger, some of us are thinner. All these characteristics of our body and our mind and how we relate to life have a lot to do with what our constitution is. And we want to live in harmony with our constitution so that, and here's a good example of living in harmony, that here's the elephant, the monkey, the rabbit, and the bird. They all work together. This is also a harmony of a community. We don't all need to be an elephant. We need to have an elephant, a monkey, a rabbit, and a bird, but all work together. Now, the best way to find out what your constitution is, of course, is to go to a Tibetan doctor, but that's what our research is. Most Americans will never go to a Tibetan doctor because there isn't one available. So we developed the constitutional self-assessment tool that you can use to try to figure out your constitution. And I developed it first with Tenzin's help for my students back in 2009, and they took it and then they said, so what? What now that I know this, now what do I do? And so we developed the lifestyle guidelines tool in order to give some guidance about how to live in harmony with your constitution. And Carolyn and Sue will report about that. Okay, that's karma. There are books and libraries about karma, and I did it in just a few minutes, so certainly this is an overview. Okay, so what we're learning from this is, okay, make good choices, don't make poor choices that are consistent with your constitution. And so why don't we do that? Why do we suffer? And so let's talk about suffering. And this has been just so transformative in my life and for my students. It's amazing if you put this into practice how much happier life is. His Holiness says the purpose of life is to be happy. Ah, I'm the daughter of a fundamentalist evangelical Lutheran minister of the most serious kind, that we grew up thinking ours was the only right way, and happiness was not part of the formula. So it's wonderful to study this and realize that we have the right to be happy. And so set up a life in which you can be happy. But why do we suffer? Why aren't we happy? And this is amazing, is that the teaching is that it's because of 3 kinds of mental poisons. First of all, greed, dissatisfaction, desire, attachment, craving, fear of losing what you have and not getting what you want. When I was a kid, we used to say, I want what I want when I want it, I get what I want when I grab it, I get what I want, but don't want what I get. When I get what I want, I don't want it. Now you repeat that back to me. I'm sure none of you have that problem, right? But just our culture is set up to make us dissatisfied. We got to have a bigger TV, another degree, a bigger car, another whatever. And so we go through life dissatisfied. And if we're dissatisfied, that's very hard on the body. It's hard on the immune system. And if we make decisions out of that mindset, we probably are going to make poor lifestyle choices. Then the next one is anger, irritability, antagonism, aggression, hostility, rage, hate, abuse of self and others, running over someone to get what you want. In our culture, we often say, you got to get it off your chest. But Tibetan medicine teaches there are better ways to deal with conflict than anger. Find a better way. Back to karma. If I don't like something you do and I behave with anger towards you, you're not likely to put your arms around me and be kind to me. You're probably likely to be angry back again. And then I'm going to feel bad later about behaving with anger. So find a better way to do this. And furthermore, with anger, what happens when you're angry? What happens to your heart rate? What happens to your blood pressure? Yep. And what happens to your breathing rate? Shallow, erratic. It's not a good way. In fact, there's research to show that 15 minutes of anger will depress the immune system for 6 hours. And 15 minutes of practicing compassion will enhance the immune system for 6 hours. Now, most of us, when I get angry, I don't keep it to 15 minutes. And so we need to find another way to deal with anger. Otherwise, we get hot under the collar. You know what happens when somebody's angry? They get all red in the face. And if they do that for 20 years, think of what that does to their body. Then the third one is delusion, confusion, closed-mindedness, denial, lack of understanding and insight, judgmental attitude. And for me, I think the way it works, first of all, I want someone to behave in the way I want them to behave, or I want life in a certain way, and life doesn't cooperate. And then I get angry. Why can't I have it my way? Why can't I be the center of the universe? And then it still doesn't happen. Then I say, well, I might as well stay in bed, pull the covers over my head, and not get up. And so those are the 3 different kinds of mental poison. And this will come out in 3 different kinds of depression. Is that So if somebody is engaging in greed and dissatisfaction, that kind of depression is the person is nervous, anxious, can't sleep, pacing. The kind of depression that comes out of anger is lashing out, hostile. The kind of depression that comes out of delusion, that person is just doesn't do anything, can't go out of the house, can't get out of bed. And so you can sort of tell what kind of person you are by when you get depressed, which one of these categories fits you better. Now here's where Tibetan medicine is brilliant. I'm a PhD RN, and I've had the best of a Western education, but I think this gets at better why we are out of harmony than anything I've learned in my education. According to Tibetan medicine, if we engage in greed, attachment, desire, then our lung energy, our movement energy goes out of balance. And if our lung energy is out of balance, we're more likely to engage in greed, attachment, desire. And this leads to anxiety, movement disorders, insomnia, mental illness, addictions. If we engage in anger, that increases our heat energy. And if our heat energy, our TPA energy is high, that can also increase anger. That's going to lead to inflammations, infections, metabolic and hormonal problems. And if we engage in delusion, confusion, then that affects our bacon energy, our cold energy. We can end up with respiratory problems, obesity, diabetes. We always have choices about how to behave. Poor choices promote imbalance, illness, and unhappiness. Wise choices promote balance, health, and happiness. So we need to be awake to who we really are and the choices we're making, that we are not just passive recipients of what's going on. This philosophy is empowering, that we have choices, and no matter what our situation, and how many Tibetans have been in a Chinese prison for many years. The story His Holiness talks about the Lama who was in a Chinese prison for something like 27 years, and he got out, he went to see His Holiness, and His Holiness said, what was the hardest part? And what did the Lama say? He said that I would lose compassion. And probably if he had not practiced compassion, if he'd been angry, it would have depressed his immune system and he might not have survived. Okay, now that's suffering. Now let's go on to healing. We need to heal from the source. So we need to heal our physical body, our energies, our chakras and channels, our thoughts, way down to our karmic seeds. What is in our mind, Freud was right about this, is what's in our mind, that is the source of what's going on in our life. As you look at me, I am the result of what is in my mind, all the experiences I've had up to this point. So if you look in the mirror and you don't like what you see, then say, okay, how do I unravel this and become the kind of person I want to be? Or how do I be fully who I am? Because then that's the way I'll be my best self. And we need to develop health through balance. And Dr. Tamden's going to talk to us more about that. And there's no formula for that. So select a middle road. Not too much this way, not too much this way. Dance with life. There's a wonderful symbol in Hinduism about Shiva dancing with life, and we need to do the same. So if it comes to me from this direction, dance with it, and don't be rigid and break. We don't want too much or too little, and so each of us needs to constantly be looking at that. When am I out of balance, and how do I bring myself back into balance? And it's something we need to listen to our internal wisdom, and it's probably not something that an external person can tell us. And so in Tibetan medicine, on a very superficial level, we'll go deeper. We want to bring our energies back into balance with the opposite treatment, just like a teeter-totter. So if your lung energy is too high, you're running around, you can't sleep, and you can't sit down, then do something that's warm, grounded, and calming. For example, go home, don't talk, sit and drink a cup of herbal tea, maybe listen to some soft music. If your heat energy is too high, then do something and think something cooling. We talk to kids about taking a time out. And as adults, we need to do the same thing. We already know that. On a hot day, we don't dress in woolens. On a cold day in Minnesota, we do dress in warm clothes. But we also need to do that with our thinking. Then when we're all heated up in our mind, we need to calm down, cool down, before we make choices. There are few emergencies. If you're bleeding to death, that's an emergency. If you can't breathe, that's an emergency. Most other things are not emergencies. So it's best to step back when there's some kind of conflict, cool down, get that lung energy down, and then make the choice about what to do, and it'll be a more informed choice. And then for bacon energy, cold, if you can't get anything done and you're procrastinating and you can't get out of bed, then do something that's dry and warming. You might want to do some vigorous exercise, like go for a walk, drink something hot, get that bacon energy up so that it's not so cold and you can get some things done. And then how to heal the mental poisons is that if we are engaging in greed, attachment, desire, we can heal that by meditating on impermanence, that everything is constantly changing. And we can't keep things the way they are. Is when my mother died, I was so surprised to see that there was still traffic on 394. The world didn't stop when my mother died. It's not going to stop when I die, and it's not going to stop when you die. The Mississippi River keeps flowing along. So we need to come to accept that and dance with it instead of trying to make things the way we want them to be. Anger, the way to meditate, or the way to heal anger, meditate on and practice compassion. And compassion is based on that all of us are the same inside. All of us are made of the same elements and energies. And so let's be kind to each other. We are of the same kind. We are not a different species from each other. And the way to heal delusion, confusion, and closed-mindedness, meditate on and develop wisdom. Now, in my years of getting my PhD, and I did 9 years of postdoctoral work, very little talk about wisdom. All of it was about knowledge. And so my favorite definition of wisdom is the story of the Buddha. And somebody said to the Buddha, "Who are you? And are you an angel? No. Are you a god? No. Well, who are you?" And what did he say? It's a well-known story. What did he say? "I'm awake." Wow. Take off those colored glasses. Take off those blinders. See everything. And when we do yoga, we do postures in every direction. It's not just so that we're flexible in our body, but we are flexible in our mind. If we can see everything as it is, not the way we want it to be, we are going to make better choices about how to deal with things. Here's one of my favorite sayings about Tibetan medicine. Healing from the source begins when we discover within ourselves that we are linked with each other, the environment, and the larger forces of the universe. Then our inner wisdom flows spontaneously through all the cells in the body, promoting optimal health, creativity, peace, and joy. What happens when people get sick? They say, "Nobody understands me. You know, I just can't relate to people." And then they close up. And so they go around like this. Now, do you think the body functions well when people are like this? Open up. Open your heart wide open. Open up all those cells. Bring in prana, energy. Let go of toxins. And that's the way to be healthy and happy. Okay, now let's talk about happiness, which is what we all want. I've traveled a lot all over the world. Everyone I've ever met has said they want to be happy. Everybody want to be happy here? Yes. Okay, here are characteristics of happiness. We can train ourselves to think in this way. And one day we'll wake up and say, "You know, I'm happy." That moment might go, but the more we train ourselves, the more we will extend it to all of life. Love, compassion, kindness, contentment, responsibility, altruism, forgiveness. Uh-oh. That's my hardest one. It's hard to forgive, isn't it? You know, the Mayo Clinic conducted a research study about women who've been raped. And they found out that the women who forgave their rapist, not that they said, "Oh, that's fine, I was raped, I'm so glad I was raped," but they forgave the rapist. They did better afterward than the ones who couldn't. So last year, or a few months ago, I spoke at the Mayo Clinic and gave a lecture similar to this. And I said, and it was a big crowd, and I said, were any of you in this research study? And one woman raised her hand, and so she came up afterward to tell me, and she said she was in the study, and when she was, I think it was 14, she was raped by somebody she didn't know. She got pregnant, had a baby at 15, and she was really angry about it all. And she got into drugs and alcohol, and her life sort of went from bad to worse. But then at some point, she decided, this is not a good way to live my life. I'm going to forgive my rapist. And so she did. And then after that, her daughter contacted her. She gave her daughter up for adoption. Her daughter contacted her, and they developed a really good relationship. And the two of them, the daughter I think is like 19 now, and the two of them are working together to help other women who've been raped. And she said, next time you tell this story, tell them, I could not do this if I had not forgiven the rapist. Joy, patience, humility, tolerance, meaning, integrity, peace. All my students have seen this. This is a lotus. And this is a pond behind my house. And for years, I walked by the house or by the pond, and I didn't see it. Then one day, the neighbor planted the American lotus in it. And this pond, or this muddy place, it became a garden. And it was so beautiful. Now the neighbor's sick, and the lotus is not there anymore. But fortunately, I took a photo. The lotus grows in mud. It transforms mud into nourishment so it can rise up and bloom. Each one of us, Tibetan medicine teaches us how we can transform the mud in our life into nourishment for our evolution ethically and spiritually. So what we want to do is bloom like a lotus, see mud as nourishment, rise up to your best self, heal yourself, transform your surroundings, and be a healing presence in the world. Here's a wonderful picture of a sage, a wise person. Live your life in such a way as to become a sage. And the world desperately needs sages. Live your life so you become wise, and give back your wisdom to the world. And this is how we can heal the world. So in conclusion, karma, as you sow, so shall you reap. Suffering, negative thinking suffering leads to, with negative thinking, that's the cause of suffering, leads to unhappiness, imbalance, illness. Healing, heal from the source and develop health through balance. Happiness, bloom like a lotus. Turn your mud into nourishment. And my favorite way to do this is Tonglen meditation. We don't have time to do it together today, but when you go to the THA website and under my name, there's a link to Tonglen meditation. And what it simply is you breathe in the suffering of the world, or if you're on the outs with someone, breathe in that person's suffering. The reason the person is behaving in that way is because that person is engaging in negative thinking. So rather than being angry and adding to the person's suffering, we can breathe in that person's suffering, breathe out compassion, and at the very least, it'll open our heart to that person. And by changing that energy, it may even change the relationship. So breathe in suffering, breathe out compassion. First of all, for yourself. We need self-compassion. You can try it with a neutral person, like a clerk in the store, someone we don't ordinarily even see, and that'll help us see these people, a loved one, an enemy, and the world. And I want to end with my very favorite statement of all. If you forget everything else, this is it. Simply be loving kindness. And it's not even what we do, it's who we are. What kind of energy are we giving out? Simply be loving kindness. And when I feel confused about the direction to go, something comes up and I think, I don't know how to deal with that. It makes it much easier just to say, okay, I'm simply going to try to be loving kindness. And then I find my way through it. So there you go. That's my overview of Tibetan medicine. Thank you very much. We did it very fast.